Hi everyone, and welcome to this video lecture. Our topic is dashboards, and in this video we will build a dashboard in Microsoft Excel. Now, a dashboard is a visual representation of key metrics. It allows you to quickly view and analyze your data in one place. Dashboards not only provide consolidated data views, but are a self-service business intelligence opportunity, where users are able to filter the data to display just what's important to them. Dashboard skills are in great demand by employers today, so if you can build great dashboards, it'll certainly be a valuable skill to have. Now, in this activity, we are going to build a dashboard, and our end result is going to look something very similar to what you see here. In this particular activity, we will build a dashboard that will include some metrics. We will also create a table with our top 3 customers based off of our data. We will also create a trend line chart that'll show our orders per quarter and year. After that, we're going to create a donut chart that will show the orders per region. We'll then create a 3D column chart that will show the items with the most units. We'll add some slicers so that we can filter our data. We'll also include a timeline. And then when we're all done, we will edit our dashboard so it is visually appealing. Now, this activity is located in the Canvas module in our course space. I've also included some websites and articles on the web that are very good at providing information about dashboards and dashboard design. The activity that we are creating is located right here, and the start file is located right within that activity as well. So this gives you a nice little snapshot of what your final results should look like, and then you will also see the corresponding rubric for which you will be assessed. Now, I have the start file located right here, our data file, and when we look at this table, we see that we have some fields like order date, customer, and total amount of order. And we're going to start by creating a pivot table. So I'm going to go up to the Insert tab, choose Pivot Table. Notice it automatically selects the range of data that it believes is what I would like, and it is, so it's correct. I would like this to be in a new worksheet, so I'm going to say OK. We're going to rename this worksheet Dashboard. And we are then, before we get into designing it, we do need to ask ourselves a question. We need to ask, what problem are we trying to solve? It's important to think about the metrics or the key performance indicators, the KPIs that you want to track. So for our purposes, our first metric is that we want the sum of our totals. Right, so I'll come back to my worksheet here, and we're going to drag the total field to our values area. And we would like this value that we see here to be read more easily, so I'm going to do a right click and I'm going to modify or edit the number format. So we're going to specify that the number category is number. We would like this to be a whole number, and we would also like a thousands separator. We're going to follow the same steps, and we're going to add our units field to the values area. And again, we're going to modify that value, the number format, specifying it as a number. It's a whole number. We can't have a piece of a unit. And we want our thousands separator. Now notice also that we're getting the sum of our units, but we could summarize our values by another way. Right? So you have other options. The next step that we would like to do is create a table with our top 3 customers. And I'd want this to appear in my dashboard. Now I noticed this did not get renamed. We want to rename this, should be called dashboard. I'm not sure why that didn't take. Okay, so I'm going to click in cell A9, but I want to go back to my data, and I'm going to say Insert, Pivot Table, and again, we want to specify the range. I would like this to be in an existing worksheet, and I will say OK. Now I want this in cell A9 on that worksheet. So existing worksheet, and I specified the cell, so now it brings me back to my dashboard page. Now I want to drag, this time I want to drag my customer field. I want to drop that into my rows. And then I want to drag and drop my total fields into my values. Now we only want our top 3 customers with the largest orders. So we're going to go to the filter list, and where it says value filters, we're going to choose top 10, but we don't want the top 10, we just want the top 3. So we'll reduce that number by 3, and we say OK. And then we would like this to be sorted by largest to smallest. So I'll click in that cell, I'll do a right click, and under my sort, I'll do in descending order from largest to smallest. Our next step is, for our dashboard, we want to create a line chart. Now a line chart will give us a visual illustration of our orders, yearly and quarterly. But first we have to create a separate table with the fields that we want. So let's return back to our data worksheet. Click in any cell. We're going to go up to the Insert tab, choose Pivot Table. We'll make sure that the range is correct, and then we will choose New Pivot Table to be placed in a new worksheet, and then say OK. So that creates a new tab. We're going to call this new worksheet Year, Quarter. Now we need to add the fields to our pivot chart. So I want to drag the field called Order Date. I'm going to drop that into my rows. Next, I want to take my totals, and I want to drag this into my values area. The next step is that we want to group our table by year and quarter. So I want to do a right click and choose Groups. And notice in here that it automatically placed months, quarters, and years. But we're only interested in quarters and years. So we're going to deselect the months that was previously selected for us, and then we will say OK. So now we have our source data ready for us to use so that we can create our line chart. I'm now going to go to the Analyze tab of my Pivot Table Tools, my Analyze tab, and I'm going to select Pivot Chart. From my options, I want to select a line chart, and I want that first option, and I'll say OK. Now I'd like to free up some space. I only would like the important elements to be on my chart. So I'm going to go ahead and remove or hide the buttons on my chart. I don't need my legend, so I can delete that. I'd like to rename this Year, Quarter, because that's the type of data that we are illustrating here. I also want to to remove these lines here, these are the major grid lines, I'm going to select those. And by simply doing a right click, I can choose delete. All right, so we now have finished with this graph, and now we want to move this to our dashboard. All right, so I'm going to have it selected, and on my Design tab, I'm going to say Move Chart, and I want this to be an object on my dashboard, and I will say OK. So now it's moved to my dashboard, and I'm going to make it a little smaller here. Maybe put it up in this corner. And I will adjust these at the end as well when we're trying to consolidate everything so it looks nice and pretty. All right, so we're done with the line chart. Now we are going to create a donut graph that's going to show the percentage of our totals for each region. Now this procedure is very similar to what we did when we created the line chart. So again, I'm going to go back to my data worksheet. I'll go up to the Insert tab, Pivot Table. We'll make sure that the range is correct. We want this new pivot table to be placed in a new worksheet. And then we say OK. We're going to rename this worksheet Percentage by Region. Okay, now we're going to drag the field name region, and we're going to drop that in our rows. And we're going to do the same with our totals. So I'll locate totals, and I'm going to drag that and place that in our values area. Okay, so we have our data here. We're now going to go up to the Analyze tab. Click in the data first, and now on the Analyze tab we're going to select Pivot Chart, and we want to locate a donut chart. It's under the pie category off to the right, and then we say OK. So again, we want to delete any unnecessary data, right? So I don't need my legend. We're going to modify what that looks like. I want to hide these buttons. And I'm going to select my data series here because I want to modify these labels and how they look. So I'm going to go to More Options. I would like these to be by my category name, and I'd like them to be by a percentage. And if you want to modify this, close that out. We can, with this selected, we can look at the designs and see the different options that you have. Like mine a little thicker, so I'm going to choose that number, style 8. It's a little thicker, a little easier for us. Again, I need to get rid of that because it came with that particular style, so we'll get rid of that. I'm going to go ahead and rename this. Instead of the word total, this is going to be per region. So now that we have everything, the pivot chart, how we would like it, let's go ahead and move it. So with it selected, I'll go to my Design tab and select Move Chart. We want this to be an object in our dashboard, and we say OK. And again, let's just resize what this particular chart is going to look like inside or on our dashboard. And we can modify this a little bit later, but it's fine for right now. So now we are going to add a graph that's going to show the items with the largest units. And we decided to create a 3D cluster chart. So again, we have to create a new pivot table. So I'll return back to my data worksheet. On my Insert tab, Pivot Table. We're going to create a new worksheet. And the two fields that we want are going to be items and units. All right, so let's make sure we rename this sheet. All right, we're going to rename this units per item. And I need some more real estate here on my screen, so I'm going to close that out. All right, so we've renamed this units per item, and now we're going to drag our item field. Here's my item field. I'm going to drop this in my rows area, and then I'm going to drag my field units, my field named units. Where is that at? Here it is. And we're going to drop that in our values area. Next, we're going to go to our Analyze tab. We have to make sure that we are inside of our data. Otherwise, we're not going to have the option to select the pivot chart. So if it's gray, that's just a heads up that you need to click inside of the pivot chart area so that you can create a pivot, the pivot table area, so that you can create a pivot chart. So I'm able to select the pivot chart, and we're going to go to the column category, and we're going to select 3D column chart, and then we say OK. Now we don't need a title, so we're going to remove the title and the legend. Go ahead and remove that. I'm simply clicking and selecting it and then using the delete key on my keyboard. We're going to hide these fields. And we actually want to rename this. So I'm going to add a title. So let me come back over to my elements. Let me add a option here. Here it is, chart title. Okay. And we're going to call this units per item. All right. So now from the Design tab, we're going to move this chart. We're going to place it as an object in the dashboard, and then we say OK. I'm going to resize this, and I'm going to bring it right next to my line chart. And again, we will tweak the size of these charts once we have all of our information on the dashboard. Okay. Now the best way for us to filter our data is to use a slicer. And slicers look like buttons that we can filter specific data like region, year, or customers. And we can insert the slicers from the Analyze tab. So now the tab appears when we click in any cell from a pivot table, right? So there's my Analyze tab. So now we're going to insert our slicers. There's an option in here under the filter category that says Insert Slicer. And we are going to select regions, customers, and years. And then say OK. And I'm going to close that out. Let me come back over there, Insert Slicer, Region, Customers, and Years. Choose OK, and here are the slicers. I'm going to place my regions and years over here off to the left. Make them a little bit smaller. Just modify these a little bit. All right, come back up here. Make that a little bit smaller. Keep these about the same size. If I want to be real concise, my height would be 1.9. I can come on down, 1.9, 1.6, 1.9, 1.6. So these are the same size. We could also use our align tools as well. Now my customers, I'm going to come in here and I'm actually going to click on here, and I want this to be in a couple columns. So we have these in 3 columns. And I'll scroll on down here, make that a little bit tighter. There we go. Okay. Now from our options tab, as we see, we increased the buttons. We had some options there. So this is our slicer tool options tools. All right, and if we wanted to change the colors, we could certainly do that as well. Now the next step is we want to generate some report connections. This option allows us to link our slicers with different pivot tables. So we're going to click on the slicer called years, and on my slicer tools options, make sure that this tab, this ribbon, is visible, and under the slicers category we're going to say report connections, and then we're going to check all of our pivot table boxes. So I'm going to move this over here, see if I can open that up, and we can see that we have our dashboards, right? We're going to check all of these off and then say OK. And we're going to do this for all of our slicers. So I'm going to select the box, and then I'm going to report the connections, and then I'm going to put a check mark in each of these boxes for each of my slicers. And I'm just opening this up so you can see everything that I'm clicking on. Now another feature that we're going to add is the timeline, and we can click in any cell of a pivot table, and again on the Analyze tab there is an option called Insert Timeline, right? And we have one called Order Date, and we will say, we select the option there, and we can add this timeline to our dashboard, right? And certainly we can, now I'm going into the part where I'm starting to manage or edit the way that this particular dashboard is going to operate and how it's going to look. So that looks pretty good, and I might even make this a little bit bigger since I can. Kind of make that more of like a rectangular feel. Alright, so now it's time to modify this visually, okay? And so let's come over to the top. I don't believe we identified what this is off to the left. These are metrics, so I'm going to type in the word metrics. And I'm going to make that red, and I'm fine with that font selection, but I am going to bold it and make it a little bit larger and maybe even italicize it. I'm also going to come in here and minimize my zoom so I can see what this looks like if it were on a page. And I actually would like to kind of shimmy everything over. So the easy way for me to do that is to click in my column area, do a right click and say Insert, and now everything gets shifted over. So I have that. So now everything will not be aligned off to the left. The other thing that I would like to do is could modify this, my donut chart here, right? So if I look at my pivot chart tools, if I wanted to double click or edit my labels, I would simply go and do it. Whoops, keep them all selected, right? Let me click out and come back in. And okay, double click is coming with my format data labels. I've done this. Let's see if, again, I'm going to hold down my control. I want to select all of my labels. Let's do a right click on those and change my data label shapes. How about we change the color of them? So if I came back here and I made them a different color. I think black may be better. It's a little easier to read. I also want to make them a little bit larger. All right, and I will come in there for central, make that a little wider so I can actually read that. Okay, so that looks good. You can certainly tweak that to work for you. All right, this board metrics, I am going to make that even a little bit larger. And maybe make that a little bit wider so I can see my little filter options in there. Close that out. I want to get rid of these lines in the back, okay? That is under my view, and I can certainly remove my formula bar and my heading and my grid lines. So now I no longer see my column headings and my row headings as well as my grid lines. All right, so I'm done. I think we're done here. And now as you click on your slicers, you get your real-time data. And because these are linked to the data source and these pivot tables, our dashboard is going to be up to date. Okay, so when you've completed this, I want you to save your file, and I want you to upload this Excel file to the activity link in Canvas. All right, so that is how you are going to submit this activity. Right, so this visual here looks a little different than what we completed, but it's on the same lines. Okay, if you have any questions, kindly let me know. You know that the Canvas inbox is the best way to reach me, and I do hope you found this video to be helpful in learning about dashboards. Thank you.